Well, I'm still looking for someone who will represent the left's position. I've been working at this for 3 years. No one's come up out of town. Well, I've been thinking about inviting the police chief, Cormier, here. I can imagine what would happen. I think he would be in Heckenblecker's office the next day. It won't take long. Camille Anthony, I can't mention a name, suggested maybe she'd be a good candidate, but if I didn't mention that name, that caused a lot of problems too. Considering all the statements I've made about liberals, I would think they'd be calling furiously, but that is not the case. I was once a leftist myself, and if I ever heard someone talking about me like this, again, I would be there to challenge him without any doubt. So I'm really puzzled by that. About a year ago, I invited Mr. Ryan, the history teacher at the school. He has a group called Left and Right, and that's the title of the show, Left and Right. I also met the leader of the Unitarian Church, Mr. Kutzmark, and that's 2 years ago, I guess, and I haven't heard from him either. They're not very complimenting in this area. So anyway, well, really, what's wrong with a civil conversation to enlighten the audience about each other's position? Well, really, what's happening here is the left does not want any scrutiny. They have all the answers. Why would they want to consider talking about it, to expose their real position? It's settled law. Hi, I'm Straight Talk. We have another session here tonight, as we usually have. Every couple of weeks. This is the 3rd week this time. I'm broadcasting live from the RCTV studios in Reading, Massachusetts. This is May 5th, 2011. Tonight is a live show only, and from this point on, it will be reruns for another 2 weeks. So feel free to call with the number listed at the bottom of the screen. Unfortunately, I'm here to report that Mr. Ed Saunders cannot ever be here. Hopefully he is in heaven. He was an assistant to Sean O'Malley, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, and he had a questionable start in his position, and I invited him to debate the issues regarding the 1913 law, and he never came. So we'll have to take him out. And tonight we have left versus the right. My premise, I got a few. Redistribution of wealth. Of course, that's Obama's favorite statement when he spoke to Joe Plummer during the time he was campaigning. And one of the things that was really surprising, and this paper here is the USA Today, which voted for Mr. Obama in an editorial, also approved of the health care, yet they reported that 47%, nearly half of all the federal income tax filers, did not pay any income taxes. In fact, they either got a credit, possibly even benefits of some sort or other, or subsidies, which is an amazing number of people. In my time, it was maybe 20, 30% of the people would do that. So we know which way we're going on this, truly the redistribution of wealth. Second item, the left promotes and encourages increasing dependency upon the government service, and that is the services of the government. Why? To buy votes. It's very clear. It's indisputable. They degrade the self-worth of many of the most vulnerable people they supposedly service, or at least are representing. They claim, they're really shamelessly hypocritical. They claim to be champions of the poor and those who are underclass, I guess you'd call them, and yet they are not. They're there to promote the continuation for their votes. And another point, part of my premise is they like to keep the underclass poor, and I call that, and I refer to it many times, as mental slavery. You know, they had physical slavery during the 1800s. Now they have mental slavery. Thank you to the left. There was once a video clip during the last election, and I remember there was a cameraman interviewing a black woman, and she says, when Obama gets in, we won't have to pay for gasoline. This is what happens. Everything comes from the government. No one is here to represent the left. Did you hear that? Good. It's not my fault. They're not here to represent the left because none have the courage to come and make those opinions and statements to explain themselves as to how they can act the way they do. I will present that side. I have excellent credentials. For the first 25 years of my life, I was a leftist or a liberal. And so my credentials to do this are good. And if I'm not doing a good job, then you'll have to come, call, let me know how I'm doing. I've achieved the American dream. I've gone beyond just simply owning a house. It's not a rags to riches by any means, but certainly, in fact, the rags I used to wear weren't rags. They were my mother's own clothes. She was a seamstress, and I didn't realize how lucky I was, but I don't recall liking it because everyone else had something different than what I had. As far as my riches, I wouldn't be in Reading if that was the case. But you can still be rich and live in Reading. I know some people who are. Well, again, I try to borrow Mr. Obama's TOTUS, you know, his teleprompter, and unfortunately it's being used. He's using it again. So, again, I have spotless credentials as a liberal. I voted for Mr. Ted Kennedy before and after Chappaquiddick, and all those years before that are all lined up with the leftist or liberal position. Of course, at that time, the liberal position is more like what the Republicans represent or conservatives represent. That's how far left the left has gone, and also how far left the Republicans have gone. So we have that situation. I am good at speaking about the left. I am good at speaking about the liberals, because I was there, I know their mindset. And probably that's the reason I don't want to come to the table. I was born and raised in Chelsea, Massachusetts, in a low-income family. We had no car, no vacations, but I did have handmade clothing. Not all the time, but when they were small, there was not a problem with expense. But my mother was a seamstress, my father was a barber, and it was a good place to live and raise a family if you were low income. I earned 3 degrees, associates, a bachelor's, an MBA, and I borrowed money once from the government, the federal government once, and that was $1,000. I can still remember that time. All the other money for it, I worked either as Northeastern work, co-op work opportunity, or my employers. So I want to thank again all my employers, and I in turn as a business president, I have also extended those same privileges to my own employees. I'm still married to my dearest and fairest, who is a very private person. So that's the closest I get to her name until she gives me permission, which is probably never, or at least not in my lifetime. I'm not as much as a private person because I have a message and I believe I'm an excellent person. Not believe, I know I'm an excellent person, actually mentioning and driving that position that you can make it as I did and many others in Massachusetts who have, even my own friends. I've gradually changed from my left, and it has become more of a journey into a conservative position. My epiphany, or what you call moment of revelation, was during the LA riots in California. The Rodney King incident spurred all kinds of riots. It was after the Watts riots, I believe in the early 60s or late 60s. And what happened was when they were reporting, the thing that really kind of became a revelation to me was that there were hundreds of Korean stores in the black neighborhoods. And I said, why weren't they black stores that is owned by black people, servicing their own people, helping their own people? No. And with later understanding, it took me a while, and I know that journey, to know it was an entitlement mentality. And it didn't make a difference who was in those stores. They weren't going to be in those stores for whatever reason, entitlement, a lack of initiative, motivation, family structure, all these things were prominent at that time. I became a Perot supporter. In 1992, Perot came on the scene. I actually marched in the parade. I never did that before. And I became very enamored about his position because I was really at that point really into transition into thinking that neither party was interested. At that time, there was a financial crisis also in Massachusetts or in the United States. Nowhere near as it is right now, nowhere near. I now belong to the Constitution Party, and I strongly favor it. It's the third largest party in the United States. I had been a liberal, as I said, but never really a leftist. And unlike Obama, who is a leftist. And I really became a rightist, you know, rhymes with the right language, right being rightist. So tonight we're talking left versus the right, and I'll be talking about you. That's right. You got nobody else to talk? That's too bad. I can't help you anymore. I'm using my experience from my youth in the 40s and 50s and as a basis of comparison to where we are today. What are the redeeming values of the left, the Democrats, the liberals? I say very few. If there were more, if there were a lot, they'd be here to explain to us how we are being led rightfully, and there are visionary positions and all that. So, second, how do they justify those positions? Well, with great difficulty today, because those people they're talking to mostly are responsible people. We've become a country divided mainly because of the democratic positions of identity politics. They have all kinds of identities. They have the women, they have blacks, they have homosexuals, they have Hispanics. They're going after to divide us into every single kind of category that you could. Class warfare, race warfare, anything possible to maintain power over you and over the responsible people, because those people who are responsible are not going to be voting for this kind of position, these kinds of positions. Now, how has the Democratic Party helped the vulnerable, the poor, the underclass during the last 50 years? Now, let me identify underclass. It was a word that was introduced by Myron Magnet, and he, about 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and I picked up on that word. Underclass means that these are people who are not lacking opportunities of education and work. These are people who chose self-destructive lifestyles, or not going to school, not behaving, not being part of the family, not joining gangs, not becoming alcoholics, drugs. All of these things are part of the underclass mentality, which is been kind of a norm for the inner city. To self-destruction of the great many of people in the inner city are like I was. But unfortunately, excuse me, there's a growing number, spurred by the gangs and others, despite the efforts of the churches and all that, they haven't been able to achieve decline of those behaviors. I and my 3 triplet brothers succeeded, and we weren't underclass people. And there are many other families. Now let's look at the data. Really, by education, I'm an engineer scientist. I solve problems. Every day, that's what I do. And what I'm explaining is another problem to be solved. And I'll give you suggestions of how I would solve it and give you an idea of what's happened, and using data from all my reading that I've done. So let's start. Left, are you ready? And I'm right. So since you're not alive, I'll have to speak. So let's look at the first data point. Fatherlessness. It's the most important thing I can think of in terms of where we are. It's just like being a platoon in armed services. A platoon is part of a company, I believe, and then also the company is part of a battalion, and you continue on upward. The platoon happens to be a key cornerstone unit. Without a strong platoon or platoons, you'll never get to a strong company, etc. It just crumbles. The Army spends a lot of time developing those skills to form unit cohesiveness, despite the fact of the don't ask, don't tell, which is going to really drive a lot of stakes into different things. Politically correct armed services is going to undermine and cause problems in our ability to continue on being number one. Anyway, the family we have is broken. There are very few people who don't agree with that. It's dysfunctional, nowhere near what it used to be. About 20 to 30% of blacks during my time were fatherless. That is, children were fatherless in the 1950s. Today, it's about 70%. That's a dramatic increase. So you can see what's happened, and the costs are being distributed to all of us. The responsible pay for the irresponsible. You have Hispanics, about 50%, and at that time, it was 30% during my time. Asians, they have about the same rate of fatherlessness as whites. Overall, if you add them all up, the four groups, you have about an average of about 40%. Far higher than it was during the time that I was in the 50s, and the non-Hispanic white at that time were about 5% were fatherless. Today, we're up about 30%. But overall, it's a 40% average. And it's getting larger. So you want to self-defeat as a country, you want to spend more money, which we can't afford, we're going in the wrong direction. So how did it happen? Well, in a large part, it was related to welfare, which is promoted by the democratic life. That's you, the left. Democrats gave minorities all they wanted, whether it was good for them or not good for them. That's the way it was. In turn, they got their vote. You know, it's the old Chinese proverb, you give a man a fish, you fed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he will be able to continue fishing on his own for his lifetime. The Democrats, that's you, they continue bondaging people by, it's a fish for you, another one, another one. That's what they want. That's how they do it. They draw out your own self-esteem until you have none. They do not want blacks to be minorities, self-reliant, not whatsoever. Mental slavery. How about Oprah Winfrey? Where's the other celebrities? They're silent. They do their own things to help what they can, but they do not want to upset the apple cart. You got black rap music, you got violence, anti-women. This is the kind of culture the blacks are growing up in. There are gangs throughout the United States in the past 50 years. If you watch a program called Gangland, it's been running for a few years on History Channel. It's just an education to see how bad things are. And the gangs are getting they're proliferating throughout the United States. Very sad to see where we're going. Even in my own city that I lived in, Chelsea, gangs, M13 gang, notorious gang. Lastly, that's right, time goes by fast. Anyway, Chelsea gangs, we are now normalizing all this bad behavior. What's the right direction? The right, that's me, not you. Good concerted actions have occurred. First, we have the Welfare Reform Bill, which Bill Clinton, who was not a leftist, he wanted to end welfare as it was, and he did. And he also mentioned strengthening families. Today, the left never mentions that, only the right. Bill Weld. Again, he modified welfare in Massachusetts. It was with the help of the legislature, but if it wasn't for him, it would never have happened. You have Bill Cosby, a celebrity of great stature in the last few years, 5 years. He has promoted the idea you can't blame racism for where we as blacks are, where we are. You can't blame it on them, on that racism. You can't blame others for what you're not willing to do for yourself. This is a bad trend. Then you have the third point I want to make, and that is personal responsibility. You need more blacks, role models, to help out with this. So many blacks and Hispanics, mainly, have prospered, but irresponsibility are still increasing faster than responsible. So the future, still far too many welfare benefits for many who are able-bodied. My idea is to force families to work together. If their pregnant daughter or if their pregnant cousin, they should come together and raise their child together to know what responsibility is. That used to happen in my day. Again, shows you how far we are. We're going to pay for that. We're paying for it right now. Well, we're about halfway through. I'm talking about the left, that's him, her, and the right. No one's willing to stand in and give the left this position. I am, because I was a leftist at one time for 25 years. And for the last 25 years so far, I've been a conservative. All right, let's talk about the last section. And this will be part one of a three-part, probably two-part, three-part section, depends on the ideas I come up with. Second major point, we have fatherless families first. Second is education. A fact, about 50% of Hispanics and black students do not graduate. You notice I left out the Asians. Well, the Asians have the graduation rate roughly the same as whites. In fact, in colleges, they outnumber the whites. And there's some colleges in California, University of California, where 70% of the graduates are Asians. They're smarter than we are. That's fine. We need people who are smarter than us. It's, this rate of graduation has steadily declined from the time of the 50s. So what's happened all this time? You, the left. These guys are the ones who promote that. Summary, well, first of all, you got single-parent families. That increases the dysfunctionality of families. They don't have time to study. There's no father there. It makes it very difficult for mothers to bring up children. Very difficult to teach students. Then you have the gang influence. Very bad influence, not my time. And, you know, the left will only help the vulnerable when the situation is very bad. Why do they do that? Well, 90% of the contributions are from the unions who support the teachers. So they're not going to, you know, as long as they're getting money from the unions, they will comply and do what the unions want them to do, is that they will do anything possible to maintain their power, that is the unions, along with the Democrats. Doesn't make a difference how much they sacrifice of youth and other people. Power, power, naked power is what they want. Whether it's from illegal aliens, they'll grab it from anywhere they can. It's a shameless approach. I think I've had enough from you tonight, so I'm going to close up the left here, and no more criticism from him about not having a chance to speak. Well, in part two, I will discuss a number of things: unions, standard of living, illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants, economic issues. These are all going to be part of the discussion of what the left has done to the United States. And each one of these things is nothing new, but I'm putting it together like I don't know of anyone else who's done this. And this is what Straight Talk is about. Telling those who are responsible where we were, and you can use anything you want from this program right here to demonstrate someone who's expressed it as much as I can, succinctly and accurately. And this, a lot of these thoughts I have are within your own mind, but I put it all together for your grandchildren to understand this is a moment in history where someone is bringing it together, because you will not find this in the books. You go through many books because many of the leftists write the books. So it's really so close to the end of the program. And unfortunately, the America that we used to know, the America we used to know, the United States we used to know, is accelerating in a death spiral. The financial crisis just has made it, exacerbated the situation. But if anyone feels otherwise, the phone is here. You can call me. my home. I have my cell phone, 781-389-6879. It's always available. I don't think I've ever gotten a call, but that's okay. I'll continue on. I have a couple of minutes here. Liberal, out of the dictionary, a political philosophy based on belief in progress, essential goodness of human race, the autonomy of the individual, and standing for the protection of political and civil liberties. What prose? Excellent. I agree with that. Except when you compare that to what's happened in the United States and what they support, they're pro-pornography. There's not been one case, I read, where the Obama administration has prosecuted anyone for pornography. They're not interested, not whatsoever. They're not interested in protecting children or anybody else. Healthcare is a right, and here in Massachusetts, even affordable housing is a right. 10% of all of us spend money to provide, quote, affordable housing. I've yet to understand a complete impact of affordable housing, but I intend to prepare a program, and the reason it's difficult to find out is they don't want you to know what it is. They don't want you to know it's really a welfare plan where everyone contributes more, but they're using the word affordable. It's amazing. You know, you use the right word, you're all set. You've changed the whole meaning. Another one, illegal aliens. It used to be that, but then the leftists in the newspapers came up with undocumented immigrants. I mean, you talk about they're doing everything but lying. Undocumented immigrants. That's their term. It shows you how much they are for making sure that people come to the United States and they join in and they go through a process, not to jump the fence and jumping and getting ahead of everyone else. Criminality to them means nothing. That's why you have these liberal judges all over the place. Yeah, your turn, you've had it. In any case, special rights, affirmative action. They're not interested in giving equal rights. They want to give special rights. I think I've had it, just like you have down here, Mr. Left. We'll go back to the newspaper, find out what we can do, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks and get you part 2 of this program. Left versus right. Oh yeah, here's another topic. The Missouri is being flooded, the river. You know, about 10 years ago, they thought that was the 80-year flood. That is, every 80 years or 100 years, they have a flood. Well, they have another one right now. They can't buy these houses. They try to buy these houses of people's homes are flooded, yet they pay for them through some insurance plan, and then they get flooded again, looking for more insurance, etc. So that's the way it goes. Arrivederci.